Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to this week's edition of the Digital Shop Talk Radio. I'm Tom Dorsey, and today we got a great show for you. Welcoming Dennis Eidson from Honest One, Roswell, Georgia. And he's got a great story to tell. We're going to be kind of going through his evolution. He's been with us about going on a year and a half, maybe a year and 8 months, something like that. And it's been a roller coaster of success. Welcome, Dennis Eidson. Great to have you on, buddy.
Good to be here.
And Dennis, real quick, I should have asked you before. Am I saying your last name correct?
It's actually Edson, but
Edson. Okay, Dennis Edson, perfect. And of course, Uwe Kleinschmidt, our part of our expert panel of experts and our founder and CIO. Welcome, Uwe.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, and welcome to everybody in the audience and attending. And of course, as always, hit that question button, hit that chat button if you got any questions, you want to give some feedback and interact. And if you're really froggy, John Long, I can always add you to the panelist list or unmute your microphone if you want to join the show live. So let's get started. Dennis, tell us a little bit about, because like I was teasing them last week, right? I go through the shop metrics a lot, it's kind of my job, and just kind of see where everything, and you really stood out. You come on, I'll tell you what I did is I had sorted by ARO increase over the last 90 days, and it was and you were way up high on the list, right? So I started digging into your metrics, and and of course, we hung out at the conference, and I know you've been engaged with Bill and Uwe even to some degree, but not really, I guess it just hasn't been top of my radar. I had to have you on the show. Because the transition or just the journey that you took to get to where you're at. And when I talk to you about it, you tell me, gosh, I feel like I'm swinging and missing. I'm just getting started. I'm not even where I want to be yet. But really, from an implementation perspective, you can really see how, it all came together and started to pay off. Tell us a little bit, why did you go digital, and how was it, to get started? And really, what was that epiphany to where it all just kind of blends?
Sure. Well, again, like you said, I don't even feel like I'm close to the potential that we have here. There are some numbers in the BCP that got a little screwed up a couple of weeks ago. So our ARO and our performance has been great and improving, but we have several hundred tickets that were sitting out there on hold. So those got deleted, and it made some crazy number ARO, but we still are doing really, really well. We've been in business about 10 years. I've got, really pretty small shop. I got 6 bays. I got 10 or 12 parking spaces. Feedback from our customers has always been great. They're very, very loyal. I just felt like to grow my business, I'm not growing it by doubling my car count. The way to grow my business is to take advantage of those cars that are here. Because our customers like us and trust us, the data will show that it hasn't impacted that at all, and we've managed to, sell more stuff, provide more services, and we probably don't think about it that much, but the feedback from the customers and the service we're providing with these digital inspections is unbelievable. I mean, I could tell you 100 stories. We had one yesterday. A guy came in for a pre-purchase inspection on Saturday. Spent $150 for us to do pre-purchase, and we wrote up $2,200 worth of work on his car, and he came back yesterday to do it. And I gave the customer a ride to his office a few miles away, and he said, "That's the greatest thing I've ever seen. That digital inspection made me, one, buy the car, helped me, and then I'm going to have you guys do all the work that you recommended." And it's a picture's worth 1,000 words, in this case, $2,200. So, and I got a lot of those stories, and it happens every day. I get that kind of feedback from those stories. So, for me, it was about growing the business by better AROs, improving communication, customer satisfaction. So we had been with another digital inspection company 4 or 5 years ago, and that's all it was digital inspection. Mm-hmm. It was no workflow management. There were no metrics. There were no scorecards, any of that kind of stuff. So ran across Uwe at a Napa conference, and then saw him again at the Honest One convention in early 2019, and here I am. So.
Dennis, if I may ask, are you from this industry? Did you grow up in a shop?
No, spent 25 years in corporate America as a consultant, marketing consultant, Big Six, computer consultant, systems consultant. And then 10 years ago, I said, I want to do my own thing. And I was attracted to this business because I'm not a car guy. Was not a car guy. I am now. I can pretty much talk cars now, but this is an industry that needs really good customer service. And I always tell folks, it's not hard to be better than the competition because the competition is not real good. And I think I've done a pretty good job of putting the right people in place, and that's front counter people, that's technicians that are customer centric, customer service oriented, and Honest One, the brand Honest One, we preach that, and 10 years later I'm living it, and I really believe that this is just another huge arrow in the quiver of that customer service attitude.
Yeah, and Uwe, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I just, it clicked in my head, and it makes sense. The data that I'm seeing and the progression that I'm seeing in Dennis's shop is exactly because of that. He's not from the industry. He followed a plan, right? He followed the plan because you don't know any better, or you don't know enough not to think that you know better, or whatever I just said, and whatever that's supposed to mean. But you get where I'm coming from, and it makes sense. I mean, when you're in a franchise, they have a kind of an SOP, and you kind of follow those guidelines, and then it makes sense that you would then, when you took on Auto Vitals, you kind of just followed the guidelines, and when you implemented it according to plan, it comes together. And I think that a lot of people, folks, I'm looking at you, is when you're struggling, a lot of times think about it, I guess, take the ego and the experience out of it, and look at it from, the bigger picture. A lot of the best practices and a lot of the things that your trainers and your advisors are going to be asking you to do, they tend to get second guessed a lot. Well, we come to those conclusions through the success of that implementation. And it's guys like John and Adam and, Frank and gosh, I don't want to leave all the turbo shops, everybody out there, they're implementing it in live in the shop, and they're proving these concepts that we put into kind of our best practices. It's not, it's not just a bunch of software geeks that have never been in a shop coming up with these things, although sometimes it sounds like it, right? Because some of the best practices we talk about, like, let the customer call you after you send that digital inspection. Don't call them. That's so antithetical to the way that we've been doing business in the industry for so long that it gets second guessed, and you kind of come up with your own plan and then go, wow, gosh, this thing isn't working. What's wrong? And I think, Dennis, you are a testament to that. If you get a plan and work your plan, you get the success. Because I'm looking at your data, Dennis, and you're up 34% in your ARO in the last year, and that's through COVID. 34%.
Well, and as I said at the beginning, and you mentioned also, Tom, it's like, as good as we're doing, it's like, holy crap, I keep kicking myself for the things that we're not doing well. And all that opportunity to continue to get better. And so, when I'll get into some of my data here in a minute, but it's, there's some really little things that you can do that just jump the needle very, very quickly. And it's in the software, it's in the Auto Vitals coaches. There's all kinds of mechanisms and ways for you to know, here's something I need to focus on. Here's something I need to fix.
Yeah, and as long, so Uwe, what would you say, when you look at it, because we've had this conversation a lot, we've had this conversation with a lot of shop owners and coaches, right? Is to say that what do you think is that propensity, right, to try to reinvent the wheel? And there's a part where you are going to experiment. You got to find out what's going to work in your operation. But kind of, Uwe, where do we draw the line of experimentation to say that these are critical success factors? Don't try to second guess them. If you just do this, it's going to pay off for you. And then you can find the balance according to your specific operation and your culture inside of your shop within those best practice kind of activities.
I mean, that's a whole nother podcast in itself.
In a nutshell.
But let me try to summarize it. Initially, I mean, the big deal is that clearly digital makes so much possible which was impossible before, whether that's the motorist not needing to rely just on a phone call, but get evidence for what's going on with the car, or whether that's in a shop where you can actually measure things where before you had to rely on cameras and watching other people over the shoulder. And, that's not a great environment. And, but initially, I was so fired up about that opportunity. I still am. To Dennis' point, we are just scratching the surface. But what we ran into is really, there's nothing more difficult than being in a high-paced environment where you have set your procedures and your habits and now need to change it without jeopardizing the outcome.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, you're running a business, you rely on the income, and now you have to change. I mean, that's a big deal. Or sports analogy again, right? You're losing all games, but you want to win one. The first one, how do you do that? Train harder? It's probably not going to help, right? There is something you have to change and stick with it. And I really learned a super high appreciation for, what they call don't land the plane, fix the engine while flying, right? So how to do that is the key here. And I'm really curious how Dennis has done it.
Yeah.
I had a boss in my old life that said that all the time. We got to fix the plane while we're flying, and that was a $1 billion business. But he loved to tell us that every day. So, So Tom, tell me what you.
Yeah. So let's do this then. So Dennis, why don't you go ahead and show, because Dennis is prepared. Actually, this is another real, great reason why we had him on here, is to give you guys some ideas on how you can take that data from your BCP and then, extrapolate it and populate it into spreadsheets for analysis. And Dennis came prepared today. I'll tell you what, he did his homework. And so if you could, Dennis, go ahead and share your screen and let's get into this. And I think we can get Uwe's question answered as we start to look at the data, because he actually has it broken out in a timeline for you, Uwe.
Wow.
Can you see this?
Yeah.
Yep.
I just want to give you guys, some of this I've already touched on, but we've been in business about 10 years. I have a very stable staff. I've never lost a front counter person. So I've got a service manager and a couple of service advisors. 2 of them with me from the very beginning. One's been with me about 6 years. So good, honest, trustworthy people that are great with my customers. First 5 years in business, we were pretty steady and growing every year. And then in 2016, 17, 18, we kind of flattened out. We hit a ceiling. Good news is some costs were down, and so I was making a little bit more money, but we weren't growing. We've been slowly growing our ARO for many, many years. But I think, Tom, you looked at some of the numbers earlier, and I've grown my ARO in the last year the same amount I'd grown it for 5 years. So we'll see that in a second. But I just knew from industry conferences and talking with other shops and all that kind of stuff, well, our ARO is great. And, again, it was one of the, on the higher end of the Honest One stores ARO. Felt like we still had a long way to go. So I started using Auto Vitals. I had used another DVI vendor, and that really didn't do much for me. Every time I try to implement, to grow that ARO, I was always worried about negative customer feedback. What if we pushed too hard? What if customers thought we were just trying to sell them stuff? And we got about 400 Google reviews, and a year ago we had 200, and we were at 4.6 stars. Now we're at 4.8. You go through my Google reviews, you're never going to find a customer complaining that we tried to sell them stuff they didn't need. The verse of that is, since we've been doing better inspections with Auto Vitals, I've got dozens, if not 100 reviews online, whether it's Yelp or Google or anywhere else, that point to that digital inspection as, wow, this is something really cool they do at the shop. So that's just a little bit of background on me. Here's my revenue trend, and I don't know if it's, common or typical for a shop owner to share this, but this is, we had steady growth, from 2012 to 2016, and then there's that plateau we hit. We're at 1.3 million dollars. 2019, with Auto Vitals implemented for half the year, with a focus on building ARO, we went up to 1.4. I had a plan to get to 1.7 million dollars, but this little virus kind of caused the problem for me. So good news is we're probably going to finish the year back at 1.4, which, given the 6 or 8 weeks in the middle of March and April that almost put us out of business, but that hurt. The good news is we've rebounded. Here's my car count, and all I want to show you there is that you really feel like we hit a ceiling as our ARO grew. We got to that 75 cars a week. These are paid cars that throw out warranty work or charity oil change kind of things. But we hit that 75 cars a week plateau. There's a lot of
and Dennis, real quick, you're kind of plateauing from a revenue perspective as your car count is increasing, and almost, you're taking on, what is that, another almost 20% per week of vehicles, but revenue was flattening out.
Right. Well, the car count flattened out there too, in the 16, 17, 18 a little bit. But the good news is ARO is continuing to grow a little bit. So there's a lot of industry consultants and some people that, former executives, even at Honest One and elsewhere, that talk about car count. Well, here's a picture of my parking lot. So I got a 6-bay shop, and that's about, I don't know, I have 11 parking spaces, and I think there's probably, on this particular day, 20 cars in the parking lot. It's not real easy to grow car count when you got the space that I have. So I had to do it with ARO. I really had to. And here's my ARO trend. So, again, steadily growing from 2011 all the way out to 2018. But we implemented Auto Vitals, and we added about $30 to our ARO overnight. This year, we came to the conference in Los Angeles and added another $50 to our ARO. I'll talk in a minute about Steve Baker, but Steve called me back in September, and we've added another $45 to our ARO. So in a year, we basically added $100 to our ARO. We've been growing it in small steps. Now we're trying to take big steps. My plan is next year to be in the 550 range on ARO.
Oh yeah, and you're right on target, right? If you look at that trend line, it's, unless somebody loses a leg or you nuke one of your bays or something, you're right there. It's almost inevitable.
Yeah, and I'll talk about, there are definitely other changes. I talked about a little bit yesterday that that I'm still going to have to make to get there. But $100 increase from last year to this year in my ARO, and it took me from 2013 2019 to get at $100. So that's a pretty good testimony right there.
Yeah.
I get a call from Steve Baker, and we have our monthly call a couple weeks ago. But here's, since I implemented Auto Vitals, and I'm only showing two things, and that's the inspection rate and the inspections sent. And I've divided it up into several very formal phases of our implementation. Of course, the first 6 months was that half-ass implementation. Then we went to the conference, and we came out of the conference, and our inspection rate went from 51% to 65 to 73. The inspections that we sent went at 85 to 92. So we got an immediate bump out of the conference in LA. COVID came along in March and April. I was sort of focused, I call it the PPP phase, trying to get money. And so we, our ARO during that time frame, I don't have it on here, but our ARO in those first 2 or 3 months of COVID was actually very good. It was on plan. Problem was our car count got in. And then this is what I'm afraid too many shop owners probably do, and they get lazy and they take their eye off the ball. And so revenue was still pretty good, but I probably left a lot of revenue on the table because we went from inspecting 73% of cars to 56%, 54%. So had my monthly call with Steve back in September, and he said, your inspection sent is good, your MR motorist research time is good, the number of pictures you're taking is good. You're just not inspecting every car. And so we're still out, but we went from 54 to 69 to 73. And that has absolutely, the month of October was real close to the biggest month we've ever had. Probably would have been, but we had those storms that came through the southeast, and we lost a couple of days of work last week because of the fire with that. But the Steve Baker kicking the pants phase is the one that we're in right now.
We have to frame this.
Yeah. No, this is, and that's what I was saying. You can see it, and so that makes sense too. And I didn't even factor that in and didn't think about it. Is that when that starts to kind of gel? You're right after conference, and you put on about $100 on your ARO between conference and when COVID hits, and then COVID comes in and you downtrend. But then, yeah, like you said, you start slipping on the inspection rate, and here you go. The good news is that you sorry. I put my hand on my keyboard and I'm sending messages to John Long in the chat. That's a bunch of just gibberish. Sorry about that, John. But once you kind of put those together, the funny thing is that we've had several shows. Is people that got through COVID successfully or didn't have such a big hit. Everybody took it in April, but the ones that recovered quickly is they did more inspections through summer, right? And it's almost, man, I wish you would have had that conversation with Steven a couple months earlier.
Yeah. Well, I think that, for us, one, and I hate to even say this term, but one benefit of COVID is we didn't have customers sitting in our lobby waiting on their oil change anymore. So it gave us a little better opportunity to not feel pressured to get an inspection out to that customer sitting in the lobby.
Yeah.
So our ARO was pretty good during that COVID time period. It was really in June, July, and August where it just sort of slipped and we took the eye off the ball. So, and there's no guarantee I'm not going to take the eye off. We're going to not take our eye off the ball. Let me back up real quick. I want to mention one more thing. I brought with me, when I came to the conference in LA, I brought one of my technicians. He's not a master tech. He's kind of a B tech, but he totally bought in to COVID. COVID. He totally bought into auto vitals, reading the chart wrong. And so a gentleman named Mike Gearlack, many of you may have met him at the conference. Yeah. But a younger guy, technical savvy, he got it. And so he became sort of my technician disciple in the shop. And he sort of moved into that role of inspection manager, inspection supervisor. So when the other technicians do inspections, Mike's coaching them and guiding them and critiquing them. He's also editing those inspections, and we're at a point where basically he can hand it off to the service advisor, and they're working really, really well together. And that service advisor has total faith in what Mike put on them, and so they can send it off to the customer. Don't have to spend the service advisors don't have to spend a whole lot of time going through it. Certainly, they go through it. They want to make sure they know what the car's situation is. They send off that inspection, and then they take that 20 minutes to go ahead and build the estimate. And we're a protractor shop, so it's obviously there's a lot of integration there, and it's very, very helpful and quick to get that estimate built. But that was one step I did in that post-conference excitement surge segment that helped me then, and has continued. And I'm challenging Mike now to, let's step it up. Let's get from 73 to 85. Let's get from 96 to 98. Let's take better pictures. So that's sort of Mike's role, is to make Auto Vitals better than it is right now.
Yeah,
So what did? Oh,
go ahead, Uwe.
so we hear that from everybody who came to the conference, right? So there is some secret motivation in going and speak with peers, right? So do you know what really kicked in for Mike? What was there, a light bulb moment at the conference, or what happened?
Well, so he was already so excited about Auto Vitals when we rolled it out and before we ever went to the conference. And Mike is either on the call today, maybe on the call, or he's going to be watching it on Facebook later. And so, I'm going to share some comments he made to me that he said, this was just that 2 days, that 3 days. He goes, this is the best 2 or 3 days of my professional career. I mean, wow. He's a technician. And I don't, there's a lot of the shop owners that are on this call or that were at that conference that were technicians, but now they're shop owners. I don't know that there was a whole lot of owners like me that brought a technician, to California and put them in a nice hotel, and just the networking he got, the people he got to talk to, the sessions. He's from Western Pennsylvania, and at dinner that night, I think he sat next to Fix It with Fred. So he knew of Fred. He was aware of Fred from his days in Western Pennsylvania. I just think it excited him to be involved in something that important. And I don't know. I guess I would put in a plug for other shop owners to do that with some of their technicians, and just get a bigger picture than fixing cars every day.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, buddy, because what happens at conference stays at conference, but I remember the cab ride.
Well, and that was where we all learned that Mike and I were fantastic singing Tom Petty songs. I mean, I only had a couple of beers. I could have been much better.
That might have been it. Oh my goodness! And I think there is video evidence of that somewhere floating around. I think Greg Masawyk or somebody has it like that. But no, that I mean, what a great bonding experience. There were a couple of other wise shop owners that brought some techs and riders out as well. But you're right. The motivation and the ability to network and the ability, because a lot of times, it's just voodoo, right? It's just some, it's just some tool, it's just some software. When was the last time you thought about going over to, Google conference or something? Never. But it's not about the tool. It's not about the software. It's about other people's solutions and experiences and sharing of that information. And like you said, for somebody who's coming in new and is young and hungry and motivated, hearing Frank Scandor, John Long's breakout, gosh, who am I? Good Neighbor. Help me out, Uwe. Good Works.
Good Works.
He's gonna kill me. Anyway, his breakout was so inspirational, right? From a somebody who's young in the industry to come in. And so I guess what I'm gibbering on about is that, when we get back to conference and we can travel again in the United States and we can go to events, bring your staff, rotate them through, however you have to do it, not just get them to Vision, get them to the other automotive industry events. And, that, I think that investment pays off in spades for you.
Yeah. All right. Just got a couple more things. My key takeaways, and this is from my experience so far, and it absolutely helped me grow ARO. Again, I still don't feel like I'm anywhere all the way to bright, not even close. Customers love the digital inspections. I mean, I've had hundreds of positive comments and reviews. I had one negative comment from a guy who's a good customer, but somebody recommended a transmission service and goes, Dennis, you should have known that I had my transmission replaced 6 months ago at the dealership. Yeah, sorry, that wasn't in my tablet and we missed it. So, there's no negative feedback. I've never gotten one negative, there's not one guy complaining about that transmission recommendation. Fantastic metrics and coaching are available from Auto Vitals, but you got to use them. And that may be something that I'm very guilty of not doing. Steve Baker, if you're on the line, thank you. Sometimes he calls me and I'm in the middle of something else, and I go, we'll talk another day. So I got to do a better job of taking that guidance and advice from Steve. Some service advisors and technicians are never going to get on board. And, I have recently had to let go of a guy who's been with me for 6.5 years. And it occurred to me, if a technician's, this is, me being a smart ass, but if he's capable of rebuilding a carburetor, he's probably not capable of using a tablet. I was an old school guy, and he just didn't get it. He didn't want to get on with the program, and it took me a while to finally make that change. His replacement has been fantastic. I got another manager replacement. One of the managers is retiring. So, some days, if you believe like I do that the software is going to has and will continue to change my business for the better, you might have to make some people changes. What are we doing next? When more personnel changes, we need to get back on a regular weekly meeting schedule with folks and make sure we're looking at these metrics every single day. I was doing that for the first 3 months of the year, and then of course COVID hit and things got sidetracked. We have a new focus on deferred work. The more you propose, the more you sell. If you propose $400, you're going to sell $200. That's been our
number game.
Last week, our average, actually the month of October, our average proposal was $1,200, which is the highest it's ever been, because we're inspecting more cars, putting together the estimates, and so we had the highest ARO we've ever had. It wasn't as good as it should be, given that we had a $1,200 proposal per car, but we're moving in the right direction. More training to the service managers. This is not really an Auto Vitals thing, but you get a lot of phone calls that you don't convert into customers, and you need to do that. And then at some point in the near future, I'll start talking to Auto Vitals about CRM. That's all I had for my little spiel, and I probably took more time than I should have. But,
No, not at all, man.
No.
That was awesome. Like it was said, we got to frame it.
Can we go into a few details, if that's okay, Dennis?
Sure.
So I have your BCP up, and maybe I share my screen, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
If I find
I
the share
have mine
button.
up. I'm going to let you show me mine.
Oh, yeah, you have to stop sharing yours.
Okay, good.
Can you guys, wait. Now you should see it.
Yep.
Right, and so I see, for example, number of recommended actions per vehicle is 6 on average. Is that what you try to achieve, or do you have a sweet spot there, or has that never come up?
Yeah, somewhere along the way I said that you can get overwhelmed by all the different metrics and things to focus on.
Right.
That's not one. I mean, when I look at my dip this past summer,
Right.
June, July, and August, we just kind of fell off a little bit. Definitely, you saw a decline in the number of recommended services. So it goes to, it all comes back to what I said. Last week we had averaged $1,200. Last month, $1,200 per ticket.
Right.
When we came out of LA for the first 5 months of the year, our average proposal was over $1,000 for the first time ever. So for 5 straight months, we were at $1,000. In the summer, when we took our eye off the ball and got lazy, it fell back in the $800, $900 range. And then when Steve kicked me in the pants, now we're back up to $1,200. So that's going to tie hand in hand with number of services.
So my recommendation would be that the deferred work starts with the recommendations, right? It's all starts at the technician, and Bill's favorite new feature on the TVPX is guided, where you basically have almost a guaranteed. We just had Adam and John on last week, and they had before already way above 8, and one is now hitting 17 and the other one 25 through guided, right? The guided feature of the TVPX. So I would, if you have to focus on the deferred work, my recommendation would be check this out, create a guided inspection. It will also help getting your inspection rate even up higher, because it will save the technician time and makes it more consistent. So the rhythm is going to be established much more quickly with guided, because it's cookie cutter, right? It's really highly consistent process.
We're not there yet with TVPX. We haven't gone that,
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just I want to just by looking at this, that is something I would highly recommend to consider. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, it's so easy to say, you just have to stick with it, or you have to put your foot down, or whatever language we use to show that we are going to make a change. Can you, for example, for a service advisor to estimate more with your car count, that's a lot of work to do, right? And so, how do you incentivize or make service advisors to go with, I'm okay with putting more on the estimate. I might not sell as much, but it's the right thing to do because it becomes deferred work for the reminder, and it's more work in the future, right? So how do you motivate and incentivize your service advisor to do this? Because 74 cars a week is pretty amazing. I mean, I'm blown away by your picture of your parking lot. That's a logistics, marvel by itself to get 74 cars through that parking lot every week. So if you could talk about how the service advisors adopted, and then when you had to let the technician go, you were talking about, was that freeing up other technicians, or were they, oh my God, I'm going to be next, or something like that? If you could talk about that dynamic a little bit, that would be awesome.
So in terms of incentivizing managers, maybe I'm probably not the best proactive HR manager for that. We have bonus programs in place based on GP, based on hitting certain targets. I have spiffed them. I'm not doing it right now, but I have in the past spiffed my service advisors on hitting certain inspection metrics.
Oh, cool.
But I also think that it's all, they see it. So they see the feedback. They hear the feedback. They know that when you wait 20 minutes and you call the customer and you say, you have any, did you see the inspection? We know you saw the inspection. We saw you looked at it for 387 seconds, but so they just seen it become easier to sell. They've seen revenue go up. They've seen ARO go up. They've seen their bonuses go up. So I'm a old-fashioned guy in the sense that, to me, I don't know, I assume probably correctly that most people are motivated by money, and they're getting paid
right.
more. They're more successful at what they're doing. So I haven't really had a problem with my ARO.
Let me challenge it a little bit, and not because if a service advisor is motivated by money and they have seen and experienced after the conference that, wow, I'm writing $1,000 estimates, and then it goes down afterwards, shouldn't there be some, hey, technicians, why are you not inspecting more cars, right? Drive from within, knowing that it's going to pay off, right? Have you experienced something like this, or is everybody really through the logistics and the operations just busy all day and there is no time, which is always the reason given, right? We don't have time for it.
I think putting Mike Gearlack, my technician, in that role
Right.
to help manage that process has taken some of the time stress and pressure off of those service advisors.
Okay.
So I think that was a good move on my part to sort of and free them up a little bit. I am in the again. I got one of my managers is retiring at the end of the year. I am in the process of talking to someone that I've known for years and years about coming to work with me. He and I are talking about a lot of different things along changing the operation so that those service advisors are focused on selling, and that they're not burdened with a lot of other stuff.
Right.
Again, their feedback on they feel like it's added work to their job, but it's made what their goal is to fix customers' cars, make happy customers, and sell more stuff. And I guess just to simplify, I think they feel like this is helping. This is Auto Vitals contributes to all three of those goals. With technicians, I'll bring it. We didn't ask about that, but I pay the technicians to do a good inspection. I mean, I'm paying them. They're all getting paid a half hour to do an inspection. I've heard shop owners say you shouldn't do that. They got to. For me, I don't get any pushback from the technicians. I get technician. The one technician that I talked about that we had to get rid of, he didn't get it. He wasn't. He's happy doing his oil changes and checking the brake lights and making sure that the windshield wipers are not correct. And he just wasn't motivated to do a really good inspection on the car. So he's not here.
Thank you.
So, yeah, and real quick, I want to there's a lot of engagement in the chat, and I want to get some of it in here. Our king of culture, the Duke of Dapper, Russ Crosby's in the audience, and first, he brought staff to conference, and he was kind of, backing you up there, as saying having techs at the conference is key. But he brought in, I think a great point, and that's you cannot sell if they don't ask for it. And as a suggestion is to say monitor estimated sales when we were talking about how do you determine that the service writer is able to increase that estimate rate. And, that brings up a point is because, and I think, Dennis, you have BCP notifications turned on now. Is that correct?
Yeah, I get text messages and emails when we fall out of emails.
And for folks that don't know or new or haven't set them up yet, that's you don't have to go and have the monitor open and be chained to your desk to monitor your KPIs and to get alerts when you need to pay attention to something. You can set up alerts that come to your text, and you can set a schedule for that as well. And actually, it looks like, is this Uwe? Are you showing this?
Yes.
Here are your, compliance thresholds, we call them. That's kind of the trigger points on when you're going to get that text or email. If you could, Uwe, you want to walk us through kind of how we set them up and some recommendations on when and maybe the time frame, because here's the thing.
Sure.
Is that it's like anything else. You get a lot of text messages and notifications from your apps all day long. And what happens if you get too many, you start to ignore them, right? So I think it's really important to set the right threshold and the right alert interval so that you see it, you consume it, you take action.
So the top two reasons why to put the alert in my experience and opinion is you want to catch something before it creates bigger damage. So for example, if your ARO is dropping, you should catch that. Or
inspection rate, and like in Dennis's case, right?
Yeah, I was going to say inspection rate. If you made that a really strong point in, for example, your weekly meeting, right? Re-emphasizing it will help by setting thresholds and saying every day if that's needed. then the frequency of the alerts is pretty high if you want to emphasize on something. And then you go back to the text and say, this is what happened. I just got your the inspection rate alert, right? In general, you can overload your text inbox and email pretty quickly if the monitoring interval, which is the time the average is built for, and the alert interval are very short, right? So in this case, this means the inspection rate here is being calculated for an average of the last 7 days. And the moment it hits one of those thresholds, either at the bottom or at the top, you get one alert in 7 days. Right, so this is the monitoring interval where the values are created and calculated, and this is the alert interval, because otherwise you might get an alert every day, and then it gets even worse, right? Mm-hmm. So for things you want to measure and immediately get an alert because the behavior of people is not the way you want it to, or it's so much better, then you immediately want to recognize them in front of the team, for example, right? Then use short intervals for both, and know that you get a lot of texts, right? In general, the second purpose of this is you have sit down with your trainer, you have created a goal for your KPIs, and now you want to know when you have reached goal without needing to go into the BCP and check every day, right? So if you say my AOO for this, measuring an AOO for a day doesn't make sense. Measuring an AOO for a week is, you can argue whether that makes sense, right? Especially if you're in the beginning of adopting a new program or plan. Measuring it in AOO for a month makes absolute sense, right? And then you find out, yes, it has exceeded my plan threshold, and I can go to the next phase of the plan. So for example, with Steve, you could say, Steve, our goal is blah, blah, blah. You write that down in the BCP at each KPI, go into the alerts, and the moment it's hit, you get a message, and then say, hey, Steve, what are our next goals? Yeah. Right? And so this way, the thresholds are super helpful, right? So let me summarize. Either it's something where you need sense of urgency, it normally drops below an expected value. The moment it does that, you have to take extraordinary steps to get back on track. Or the other case, you set yourself goals together with your trainer, and then the moment you hit the goal, you get an alert. Does it make sense?
100%.
And for me, we set this up. I don't know if I set this up with Steve or if I set this up with Bill Connor when we first rolled out. But, I get those alerts. I look at them. I go into the BCP, not every day, but a couple times a week. But you set it and forget it, and that's probably a bad thing. I need to come back and revisit this and say, hey, right, now that we got the experience that we do, where do I need to be? What things do I want to be focusing on? So I probably didn't know what I was setting up when I set them up first.
Yeah, I think less is more in your case, because you also see, there is almost no non-compliance alert, right? On the lower time. So that's a good thing if you want to be safe. If you're going to be aggressive, it's a bad thing, right? So you're not aggressive enough. So it really depends on how you want to use it.
Yeah, and that was a good point, about setting that monitoring interval, because, think of it like a sensitivity dial, right? The shorter the period, right, the more sensitive it is. And so in some things, email capture rate or something, it can be more sensitive like that. Most of the time, you're not going to see a big swing. But in some instances, you see swing 250 ARO to 600, and, throughout a period of time, the more sensitive that becomes, probably the more frustrated you become with getting these alerts. And so you want to blend that out a little bit. But most importantly, it's really setting a goal being transparent about that goal, in your weekly meetings with your team and making sure your team's all on board on that, and then eating the elephant one bite at a time and incrementally raise that bar. And I think that's a brilliant point, Uwe, that you had, is that, yeah, a lot of times we think of it as a defensive type mechanism to set up those alerts, but it's actually a great offensive tool as well. If you're setting, you're hitting your ceilings and you're hitting your goals, it's time to raise the bar, right? Don't get complacent. Go ahead, and once you get that alert, congratulations, have a cake and some barbecue at the next weekly meeting, and then add 25% to that goal. No, that's brilliant. No, thank you, Uwe. Thanks for showing that. I know that's going to help a lot of folks. And if you have any questions about that, of course, reach out to your advisor. They're going to help you out. You can go into the Facebook forum. You can, watch the recording of this when we post it up. You're going to find that in your settings inside of your BCP. So you go to your business control panel settings. You'll see where your primary KPIs are, and right underneath that's going to be your compliance thresholds. And then just play with them. Get in there and set them up and see how they react, and get the notifications, and then go from there. Build it out so that it becomes a very useful tool for you, so that you catch things like in Dennis's case. I mean, gosh, that notification when he came underneath that inspection rate threshold would have been great in June, or in July, beginning of July. Great news though is that it was caught, right? Teamwork makes the dream work, and you can see that turnaround. It doesn't take time to get back on track when you start hitting those best practices and getting those inspections done and communicating them to your customer. Your customers, and Dennis has been a perfect example of that, is the customers have this want. There's a need out there. There's a need for this transparency, and they react accordingly. And you'd be amazed when we talk about, when you're talking about $1,000 offers, take estimates going above it, that's that 300% rule. And, it's not a sales effort anymore. That's the thing. It's, here's information about your vehicle. Here's my recommendation for, doing this thing for a living on how you should handle this. The rest is kind of up to you, and you make that determination. You can do your research. You can, verify. And I tell you what, they come back with the approvals. And if they're tight on time or money, they're gonna follow up. Then the second question is the exit schedule. Okay, great. Here's what we got to do today, and here's the stuff we can do next month. How's the third sound for you? How's the fourth? What are you doing on the fourth? 2:00 work for you? Perfect, right? And because they're gonna commit, they're gonna get the work done. And it's not a pressure sale at all. It's education, presentation of information, and then giving them enough tools to understand and make a decision, and they'll make the decision in their favor. And if they don't, you probably don't want them as a customer. I mean, gosh, especially when you're limited on parking space. I bet, there's another vehicle that could have fit in that parking lot that would have been, more in line with the type of customer you want to do business with, and is, cares about maintaining their vehicle.
Stuff. And again, so many elements of this that we're not even there yet. So I guess that we, you used it a minute ago, Tom, and it's the old adage of, one bite of the elephant at a time.
Right.
And then that's, you've only taken a few bites. I'm already seeing huge benefits. And so I hope that, some of the guys that are on the call are some of the superstar auto shops. Hopefully there's some younger shops and newer guys that don't get overwhelmed by the elephant. There's enough little you can do to have a huge impact on your business very quickly.
Yeah. And I mean, you've got a strong culture, and just, and as a matter of fact, watch the show, Dennis, from last week, if you haven't already, when Adam's talking about introduction of guided and how, have Mike can run guided, and he can get a taste of it, and he can see some of his performance metrics, and, look at it over a week or a paper, 2 weeks or something like that, and just make a decision, and see if that's something that you want to, add to your SOP. And because then, what happens is you get a peer, you get the leader on the floor that's out there, and he's putting in the work, and he's kind of taking the sacrifice and getting it figured out. And then,
people are going to respect his peers are going to respect his opinion on that, and if he says, hey, this is better than sliced bread, well, people line up for some bread, they get hungry and they get excited. And it really is a great way to introduce that, because at the end of the day, the consistency and, the, just the ability to consistently put the recommendations out there and let the customer make up their mind and make those decisions, instead of you making them for them or the tech trying to make them for them. The results will speak for themselves. And with your close rate, I mean, you guys are selling at a 30% clip, and that's up 12% year over year, which is incredible, really. So it shows that the more that you're doing the inspections, the more that they're paying off. And then it becomes just a numbers game after that. You want to hit a specific ARO or revenue goal, and you look at your close rate and your average estimate size, and then you can adjust that accordingly, and it's money in the bank. It's going to come in at those numbers.
Exactly.
And for anybody else, if you haven't seen last week's episode, if you're interested in guided, same thing, talk to your advisor, check out that episode, and put it in the hands of one tech, and have them test it out and try it out and report back. And we highly recommend that you implement guided, just from the consistency factor alone. And as a matter of fact, you'll see that that's where the carry forward works, and there is a big time savings. For folks that are concerned about how long a digital inspection takes, if you're looking to trim time on that, the guided is the way to go. So Bill's got a couple of words of wisdom in here, and I just want to bring these in. He's saying that the industry owes it to the customer to provide condition-based snapshot and estimate all needs found and document properly. And don't ask the customer if they've seen the inspection. Ask them specific open-ended questions about a topic or two. He says it works like the check engine light, over or under threat. Oh, that's about the that's about the notifications.
Thresholds. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but and so on for the threshold, he's saying, it kind of worked like a check engine light, over or under threshold, set a warning. You get to be the engineer to set the levels. So, those tools are in there for you. Just check them out. If you need help, go on Facebook, ask your advisor. Just try them. See how they're going to work in your operation. You don't have to, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Again, one step at a time. You put it in the hands of one tech, and then just test. Oh, we're almost at the top of the hour. Man, this hour flew by. Wow. That's fantastic. Well, if you got any questions left, if we haven't got your questions in, or you have any other input, get it in now. Dennis, it was great, buddy. I thank you for coming on. I was really excited to have you on. I want to have you on again soon so that we can see the culmination of this, right? As we're starting to see this swing back and hitting that 500 target. I would imagine by this time next year, you're probably going to be, 550 hitting a 600 target. Yeah. So, love to have you back on. Gosh, I hope we get to have conference here coming up, and see you soon. If not, we got to come out to Georgia and come down and see you.
All right, guys.
And
appreciate having me on.
Of course, buddy.
And your sheet with the phases culminating into the Steve Baker success phase. I hope you don't keep the copyright on it. We want to reuse it.
Who was going to steal it?
We're going to steal it.
It's too late. Once you logged into Zoom, you signed. There's like a little disclaimer at the bottom. It's really.
Oh, I see.
So we own it all. No, just kidding. No, Dennis, that was awesome. Yeah, a bunch of people. Bill saying great job. Really well done. And thank you very much for sharing that information. A lot of people won't or don't want to. But that really, let me put it this way. Digital shops love to share their data. What am I talking about? Why? Because it's impressive. And yours really is. And thank you for, being honest presentation in there and saying, hey, here's where, we were sliding and here's what we did to get back around. And same for folks that are in, looking to achieve those same goals or struggling coming out of COVID or whatever it is. Go back to the basics, folks, right? Make sure that you're hitting all cylinders in the basics, and then start worrying about, other factors, right? But check the basics first. And like Dennis said, I mean, he even had to make the hard choice of letting a long time good, all around good employee just wasn't set up for kind of the new way of doing things. And sometimes you got to make those hard choices, but at the end of the day, the results speak for themselves when you make those right call for your operation. So fantastic job, buddy.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Sure.
Thank you.
And same time next week, tune in 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking to Levon Arnold, actually, from Long Arm Mechanics. And we're going to be talking a little bit. It's kind of another success story. It's a great success story. And we're going to be talking new customer acquisition, so you don't want to miss it. He's got some really interesting concepts and and kind of strategies built around bringing the whole digital shop concept together, and then actually using that for new customer acquisition as well. So tune in next Wednesday to hear that show. It's going to be a great one. Until then, get out there and make some more money. Uwe and Dennis, thank you very much. Bill Connor,
Thank you.
Russell, John, everybody in the audience, thank you very much for your participation, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, live stream is dead. Oh, you guys bailed out? Boy, they left me fast. They must have had some meetings or something. Well, I guess I'll leave too. If you didn't get your questions answered, folks, go ahead and get them in, post them up in the Facebook forum, and I'll make sure Dennis gets a hold of those. And actually, I'll post up some information if you're interested in getting a hold of Dennis and doing some follow-up with him as well. He's an honest one in Roswell, Georgia. You can reach out to him directly through Google, and then we'll post up some information in the Facebook forum when we post up the recording of the show. Thanks for your attendance. Have a great day.